Super excited to be back over at Denny Werner's beautiful garden here in Raleigh, North Carolina. We were here a few years ago, and I'll link that video down below. He had this unbelievable perennial border in the back garden. It's gone through a big change, and that's what mostly this video is going to be about. And we'll talk through that, but we want to show off some other beautiful things in the garden. You retired 6 years or so ago from NC State as a professor.
Yes.
But you haven't slowed down. I mean, there's a couple, we're going to go over to a plant in a minute that you're still working.
I'm still working, yeah.
Okay.
I still am doing some redbud breeding.
Yeah.
I spent about 25 years at NC State doing that.
Right.
It's hard to give up something that you love to do, so I've made it a pursuit here in my retirement.
Okay, beautiful. And you guys will recognize that Golden Falls Red Bud that's in our back garden. If you follow me on Instagram, we took a photo. Denny came over to the garden last night, and we took a photo next to it. If you follow us, over on Instagram, and several of your other trees are in our garden as well. I enjoy when the plant breeder comes to the house and starts taking photos of the one that I'm doing okay with it.
You're doing great.
Okay, good. But you have a lot of obviously you're breeding Cercis, which is native.
Correct.
But you were doing Buddleia and, working on other projects as well. But when I go to a lot of plant breeders' gardens, there's a lot of natives there. So I think a lot of people would think sometimes that maybe they're only chasing Asian round balls for the, for the American landscape.
Gardener.
But you have a great love of native plants in general, right?
Yeah, I sure do. I really don't discriminate too much in terms of what's in my garden between natives and introduced plants.
Right.
As long as nothing is really aggressive or invasive, I like plants from around the world.
Right.
So it's a cosmopolitan garden.
Yeah. And same as ours. Well, tell us about this great native.
Yeah, this great native is one of really my favorites. This is Cyrilla racemiflora. Which is native to North Carolina and the southeast. It's a wonderful pollinator plant. I bought these as court plants from Woodlander's Nursery about 32 years ago, very early on in the development of this garden.
Yeah.
What I like about this is it's semi-evergreen. It'll retain most of its leaves during the winter, but of course, the flowers are beautiful, these beautiful racemose inflorescences. When this is in full bloom, it's an incredible pollinator plant.
Yeah.
It attracts an incredible diversity of insects, from bees, solitary wasps, beetles, butterflies, moths. It's remarkable. When
you touched it, literally tiny little things start flying off of it that you just don't even know are there until you actually touch it.
And when it gets warmer today, in a couple hours, it'll be brunch time for the insects.
Right.
And I sit under this plant in full bloom. It's almost like sitting under a buzzsaw.
Yeah.
It's just quite a remarkable experience.
The one thing, we both spoke at the plant symposium here in Raleigh last weekend, and one of the things that I was talking about in my talk was why sometimes certain plants don't line up with the tables at the garden centers, because people come from April 15th to June 1st, and now it's 100 degrees, and, there's a reason they're not shopping today.
Right.
This is one of those plants, right?
This is one of those plants, unfortunately. It fits the niche of a great pollinator plant, which is very important now in the marketing of our plants. Yeah. But it doesn't look particularly good in a pot. Yeah. It flowers, as you can see right now, late June, early July. Right. So the general gardening public isn't really exposed to this routinely. It's a plant you almost have to know about and go out and try to find one. Right, yeah. And not rare though. I mean, they're out there, but there are growers, lots of growers growing Cyrilla. And another one that's about to bloom, that's also always a late one, is the Clethra. Which variety is this? This is actually not a variety. I was doing a little Clethra breeding many years ago. Okay, gotcha. And this is actually a hybrid between hummingbird, which many of you are familiar with. It's the dwarf Clethra, and ruby spice, the pink flowered Clethra. Okay, what color is it? Long story short, the pink flower color from ruby spice is not transmitted genetically. So these, I was hoping to develop a dwarf pink. but
you got the opposite.
Didn't work out.
You got the opposite.
So these, I put 3 of the F1 hybrids in this spot about 25 years ago, and you can see it's made a beautiful little colony now.
But they're perfect plant. I mean, they're really. Is that good fall color?
Yeah, it has some fall color. It's a wonderful plant.
Yeah, it looks great.
Worked out real well, and of course, as you know, great for bumblebees and other insects.
Oh, this is another one, just like Sorilla, is like everything will be on it.
Everything will be on it.
Anything that can crawl up there and get these flowers.
Yeah. So yeah, a really good one.
So this is one of your latest and greatest. Okay, tell us about this one.
Yeah, correct. I started about 15 years ago, trying to develop a series of more compact red buds using a variety called Ace of Hearts, which was discovered in North Carolina some years ago, as using Ace of Hearts as a parent. And this is a new release. Really, this year is the first time trees will be available. Yeah. This is called Amethyst Falls. As you can see, purple leaf color, more of a spreading weeping habit to it rather than the abrupt habit of many of the weeping varieties that are in the trade. This tree is about 4 years old. I'm really proud of this one. I think this is going to be a nice introduction.
So if you came to our open garden, we have emerald and amethyst.
Correct.
And so this is going to be Amethyst Falls. And is there an emerald fall? Are you going to name the weeping green one Emerald Falls? Is that what that'll be?
There will be a weeping green one coming out also.
But you don't know
I'm not sure what the name will be.
Okay, gotcha. So
that was our goal. We tried to have a purple, a good glossy green. We wanted to develop a gold leaf, which will be coming out in the future.
Okay, gotcha.
So we wanted a series in this compact, with that compact character.
Right. How long did it take you, what you would consider getting to the starting line in Redbud breeding to where you could look at it and go, I bet I could make a purple, a green, and a yellow weeper in that? I mean, like getting that far along where you knew that you could now do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I started breeding red buds about 1998 and 1999.
Okay, all right.
The idea for this came about maybe 2005, 2006.
Okay,
largely based on a visit from some Europeans. He said this tree type, this compact tree type, will really have a niche in smaller European gardens.
Yeah, and we have a small garden in it.
Exactly.
Both look great in my garden. Yeah.
So at that time, I knew enough about redbud breeding to know that I could do that, develop
That's what I'm saying.
series.
Yeah, you had gotten to the point.
I've gotten to that point. Just knew that it takes time. It's probably, it took about 10 to 12 years at least to get to that point. The cross for these was probably made around 2010, 2011, something like that. Yeah.
So slower than ornamental shrubs, because it's a tree,
Correct.
but a little faster than if you were doing large shade trees or looking for for them to form their shapes or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah. Redbud, I can push a redbud and get flowers in 3 years, enough flowers to use for breeding. I've also done some work with liquid ambar, sweet gum, and it took me about 7 years to get the F1s to flower with liquid ambar to get to the subsequent generation.
Oh, gotcha.
So liquid ambar is about 7-year cycles. These are more 3 to 5 year cycles.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, beautiful. This thing's going to be everywhere. I think, again, you said there's some availability, but not the kind of availability. It's going to be, it'll be a year or so, and then you'll see.
Exactly. It's very limited. I think the marketer has about 4,000 trees to put out there into the trade this year.
Right.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
I'm holding a branch here of a new variety called Zigzag, which is relatively new to the trade. This was actually found as a chance seedling in the wild. I believe I've heard Virginia, but I'm not really sure if that's the case. But what's interesting about it is it has this distinct zigzag character where the growth at each node takes about a 45-degree angle and grows on from there. It's very fascinating. For those of you who are familiar with redbud, you realize that there is a little zigzag architecture to most redbud varieties, but this one is very distinct, and I find it very ornamental in the winter when those bare branches show that zigzag character. Very interesting. Mother Nature's always creating something interesting for us horticulturalists.
Are you going to use this one in breeding? Are you trying to work with it to get it into maybe other forms?
Yes, I am using it in the breeding program. Actually, when I started my private breeding program, this is one of the first varieties that I started crossing.
Yeah.
So we do have F1s between zigzag and a lot of other color forms. We haven't gotten to the F2 generation yet. Mm-hmm. But again, I can imagine what this would look like in a weeping architecture, where you had these zigzag branches coming down on a weeping tree. Breeders like to dream. I hope that is realized. But yes, use this quite a bit in the breeding program.
So this is Flamethrower Red Bud, and I filmed the video that we have on the channel on this particular plant. Now, it's been 100 degrees for a few days,
correct, mm-hmm.
which is not the most happy with, but it's still incredibly striking out here. Would you just briefly explain, when you talked about F1, F2 hybrids,
correct.
what that means?
Yeah, this particular specimen of Flamethrower is about 5 years old now, and when I make a cross to hybridize two parents, when we make that cross, the first generation of seed that we obtain is called the F1 generation.
Right, and that might be from Cercis canadensis with one of the western species or whatever.
Exactly, or it could just be between two cultivars of Cercis canadensis.
Okay, gotcha.
Like a forest pansy and a lavender twist, whatever.
Okay, yep.
Then when we get those F1 plants, those F1 seedlings from that F1 seed, we have to grow those seeds out for about 3 to 4 years to get those trees to flowering stage, so that we can recover what we call F2 seed. Because it's the F2 generation that gives you the segregation and the recombination of traits.
Of the traits, okay, gotcha.
Traits. So that's typically about a 6 to 8 year process till we get F2 seedlings that we grow out, and then we evaluate those F2s to try to find the particular combination of traits that we want in that cultivar.
And so sometimes you can get the trait combo just right, or you can, where you were trying to make a dwarf pink clethra, you had a giant white clethra.
Exactly.
Yeah, you know, it doesn't. You don't know necessarily how those traits are going to present themselves.
You don't know how it's going to work. I mean, it's actually interesting that some traits in plants, such as the pink and ruby spice, are not transmitted genetically, and it's too much of a story to go into that now.
Yeah, right.
But I really don't know for sure whether the zigzag trait is going to be genetically transmitted to the offspring until I grow out F2s and see if I recover any of those zigzag types.
Thank you for explaining that.
So not everything works.
On an ant here. This is a big change.
Big change.
This is a big change in the garden. When we were here last time, and it was right about now, maybe, late May, early June, something like that. This was a perennial border.
Correct.
With, I mean, just absolutely chock-a-block full. What would make you go in here and change it up?
Yeah, good question. The border that you saw a few years ago was actually established in about 1994. Okay. So it was about almost 30 years of that border. It was a beautiful border, but as perennial borders go, it became very, very dense, and what I call the thugs and the self-seeders started to take over. You have one starts out with a design for a border, but very quickly Mother Nature makes her own design, and it got to the point where it was becoming difficult for us to manage, particularly in regards to weed control, because the border was so dense that it was actually difficult to get in there to do hand weeding, and we had some very difficult weeds to manage. The other reality, of course, is that we travel. We're out in, our kids and our grandkids live out of state, so we go visit them. So when you're out of town for 2 weeks and you come back and you say, oh my gosh, the weeds have really taken over.
The 1 week I'm home is going to be committed to this.
Correct,
right. Yeah.
So it was, that was another issue. And then, of course, the third issue was I'm almost 74 years old and I'm aging. And it's a little bit more difficult to get out there on a 96-degree day and weed. And I don't know that I necessarily can't do it. It's just there's other things in life that I'd like to do besides tend my garden. I got other interests. I love my garden, but I don't want to become committed to it 24 hours a day, so to speak. So those were the main reasons.
Nice.
And it's worked out quite well.
Yeah, this is 4 months in the ground, so you have a lot year over. Even by the end of this summer, it will be quite a bit fuller.
So with this border, we space things out considerably. Of course, they'll fill in a couple years. But it's much easier now to manage this from a weed control perspective. And number two, I intentionally put things in that are not bullies. These are largely clumping perennials or small shrubs and things that are not going to spread rapidly. You'll find that there's no mountain mint in here. There's none of the old aggressive Monarda cultivars, which are beautiful plants, but which become problematic to manage, and they start to outcompete the other plants that you also wanted to have in the border.
We want to go through a few of your favorites, or why you picked a couple of things. Is there anything in there in particular that you...
let's see. I've always liked the Malvaceae, the hibiscus group. So I have quite a few of the hibiscus. I have the native hibiscus coccineus. This is the red flowered form. That'll be blooming in about probably 2 to 3 weeks. I just like the upright statuesque growth.
I love the thin foliage on this.
The thin foliage is very, very nice. Here's hibiscus grandiflorus, I think it is. This is a big, almost dinner plate size flowers later in the year. Tony Avon always promoted this one as being a plant that you want to put next to your outhouse because you won't need toilet paper. You can edit that
out. How are you irrigating this, or are you irrigating this?
I will just irrigate this with
an overhead
temporary
sprinkler.
Tripod sprinklers.
And that's what I do, and I've said this on the channel a lot recently. In an area where you get kind of regular rainfall, I want to make the decision to water.
Correct. I
don't want it to water because it's Tuesday. Or whatever, so that's our strategy as well. It also makes you more a reluctant waterer a little bit.
Very much so, I agree. I only water when things get relatively desperate, to tell you the truth. Even though we're on a well here, I value water as a resource, and I don't like to waste it. So this border can gets a little dry when we get into a dry spell.
But you've got a lot of soil prep here, though.
There's a lot of soil prep here. There's a lot of organic matter in this soil, as you can tell. And when we designed this bed originally, we had a semi-truckload of permatill stalite brought in that's incorporated in this whole area.
When it was the perennial border.
When it was the perennial border.
Tell us about this daylily
here.
Oh,
that's a good one. I love daylilies, but I like some of the older cultivars of daylilies. And I particularly like these tall strains of daylily. These are often referred to as the altissima strains. These will date back typically to the 40s and early 50s. They were bred by a gentleman called Arlen Stout, S-T-O-U-T, who was with the USDA. And he used the species Hemerocallis altissima in his crosses to breed these tall forms, hence the name altissima strains. And by the time these scapes are done elongating, they can often be 6 to 7 feet tall. They're stunning. What I like about them is they're great front of the border plants. You'd think the 7-foot daylily you want back at the back of the border, but I like these because they're typically what I call a see-through plant.
Gotcha.
A former landscape architect I knew referred to them as. And even though the scapes are 7 feet, the foliage is just about at ground level like a typical daylily. So if you put them in the back, they get overwhelmed and the flowering starts to become reduced. So I like them in the front.
Right. So we have autumn minaret, and I know you have autumn minaret as well. And I joked at the plant symposium that I did not like daylilies. I showed myself on a lawnmower mowing down daylilies as a joke.
Yeah, I understand.
But so for me, a daylily like this, though, that's a whole nother. This is my. What the heck was I going to say? Oh, the other thing is about these is almost all the other daylilies have bloomed out, or even the repeat ones have slowed down.
Yeah.
These things don't bloom until late June, early July, and then they bloom the rest of the summer.
Yeah, that's a great point. I forgot to mention that is one of the attributes of Altissima is the late flowering, which I like. As you can see with my other daylilies, the typical hybrids, they're about finished here in what, mid to late June. These will start flowering in July and extend that season for about another 4 weeks. So they're just wonderful all around. A lot of them are hard to find.
And that was part of what I mentioned in my talk was that the reason they're kind of pass along plants, meaning that just you dig up a piece and give it to me, I dig up a piece and give it to you, whatever, is because this is hard to ship.
Yes.
If you put this on a rack in a truck, you're going to break this on the way. And there are what customers out there shopping on the 4th of July for a 7-foot tall daylily they don't even know exists until they see it, and then they think it's just whatever. They don't even nothing. But this is one to look for if you can find it.
Challenger. Autumn minaret, as was mentioned. Just remarkable.
I want to get a few more of those. Is this one of your Buddleia?
This is one of my Buddleia. This is one called Miss Ruby that we released about maybe 12, 15 years ago. My research assistant Lane Snelling and myself selected this from a field of about 5,000 seedlings. It stood out so distinctly in the field, and we just like this hot pink.
And this is one of the reduced seed.
This is one of the reduced. This is not sterile, but it has reduced fertility. That is correct. There are about 4 or 5 different species in the hybridization or the development of this variety. So consequently, you see very, very little seed development or seed set.
I see that, which also keeps it blooming, I would think, a little bit.
Correct. And the Miss series, even though they're not dwarf, they're somewhat compact. You can easily keep a Miss butterfly at about 4 to 5 feet.
Gets taller, you cut it in half. Middle of the summer, cut it in half.
Gets taller, you just reduce it.
That's what I wanted.
Jim wanted me to talk about this one. This is a variety called Orange Scepter that was developed by the University of Arkansas. A gentleman named John Lindstrom, and he had interest in trying to develop a yellow or an orange Buddleia, as I was at that time too. And yellow is a very difficult color to manage in Buddleia. But he has this beautiful form with these orange flowers that I really like. And you can tell this has very felt-like leaves, which tells you that it has some parentage from the South African species. Most Buddleia are native to China, Asia, but there are actually a number of species that are native to South Africa, and you can always tell them because they have that very interesting foliage character.
With the hairs.
The hairs, they're known more for their foliage than they are for their flowers. So John was very successful maintaining that leaf character, but also getting some distinct floral display.
I think that's going to get big, isn't it, in the future?
This is a big one. It's in the back of the border. This will easily be a 6-7 foot plant.
Before we turned the camera on, I was talking about I grew honeycomb for years, and I like that yellow, and I could sell it, but I struggled in the nursery. I wonder if this one's.
I'm not sure. I don't know how common this is in the nursery trade. I think it's somewhat of a specialty plant right now. Because it's not, it's big, it's not dwarf, has that unique leaf color or leaf character.
Yeah, it is super interesting. I see a yellow Karaopterus up there.
Yeah, I saw that that yellow Karaopterus. I can't remember the cultivar name, quite frankly. This is a recent one from Ball Company. And I saw this at the Arboretum in their trials last summer, actually, when I was walking around there thinking about what I wanted to put in this border. And I like this Karaopterus. It gets maybe about 2 feet tall, but it's very spreading. It makes a really nice low spreading mound.
Right, yeah. Yeah, it's a good looking.
And my kids live out in Colorado. Karaopterus does great out in Colorado. You can see Karaopterus everywhere. So I'll probably put one of those out in my daughter's garden in Colorado. Yeah.
Nice. Anything else in here that...
let's see here. This is, this Salvia.
Yes.
Whose name is...
Hot Lips?
Hot Lips, yeah. Yes. Thank you for that reminder. Salvia Hot Lips, which is a Mexican species. I've always liked this because it's very rugged, very heat tolerant.
Yeah.
And the interesting transitions in flower color through the season.
Yeah.
I don't know what controls it, but it goes through phases of white flowers only, white and red variegated flowers, red flowers, a mixture of the three. I don't know if it's a temperature response. I don't know if it's a day length response, but it's fun to watch those transitions in the garden. Yeah. This almost grows more like a small shrub rather than herbaceous perennial, because in mild years it'll become shrub-like even during the winter months.
Yeah, and I like these because they're kind of, it's 100 degrees and it's almost quit blooming.
Correct.
When it's 100 degrees, but it blooms in the shoulder seasons, kind of in the yeah, there it is.
Yeah.
That in the spring and fall is when it blooms the heaviest.
Isn't that amazing? Boy, that's a beautiful red, isn't it?
It is.
Oh,
it is. Gosh. If you get that just pure red.
Yeah. Very nice. Oh, I guess we could talk about this colocasia back here.
Yeah, for sure.
He was sort of feeling left out, but
look at the size of that. This is a new plant.
This is a new plant, Colocasia gigantea. I put in a quart pot.
A quart pot.
Back in after the risk of frost and freeze was over.
Yeah.
I bought this from Tony, so it came in a little 4-inch square pot. And here we are in mid-June, and look at this.
It's unbelievable.
But by the end of the year, it'll be towering over my head.
Yeah.
But it's such a remarkable plant, just based on its growth rate and these huge leaves.
Yeah.
You do need to keep it wet. In fact, I had the hose hooked up to it about 2 days ago. I just trickled the hose for about an hour to get this area very wet, but it's wonderful. The kids love it. Of course, my grandkids were visiting, and this is really an attention getter to have for young children.
And once it gets up in that sun, does it burn? I mean, is it?
I think it's burned a little bit, but I believe it's mainly burning because it's not yet fully established. It's got a lot of top growth and not a whole lot of root growth.
Right.
I've grown it in full sun in other parts of my garden for years, and I've never had any significant issues with burning.
Yeah.
But I think it does relatively well in filtered light, in the semi-shaded areas too. I'll find out if it burns this summer.
You're going to know.
This is probably the most exposed I've ever grown one in the history of the garden.
So I think when this goes to sleep one time, when it comes back next spring, it's going to be pretty full. I mean,
I think so. Yeah.
I mean, not completely full. That's not what you were going for.
Right.
Yeah. You're not trying to get it crowded, super crowded again. But I think, I mean, it won't take. But a lot of these things are vigorous.
Yeah. I'm going for. I'll be able to walk through the garden to do weeding, have accessibility in the garden to weeds. My big weed problems, of course, were nutsedge, as we all have.
Right.
I had a weed, a problematic weed that came into the garden about 10, 15 years ago called Phyllanthus. It looks like a little miniature mimosa, almost.
Gotcha. That's the one we have.
And that's becoming very, very problematic.
Yeah, it's got a deep, kind of a little bit of a taproot too.
Yes,
so you don't always get it.
You don't always get it. It's one of those weeds you pull, but you leave a little bit behind to come back to haunt you later.
Yeah.
And then a native weed that again I didn't have when I started this garden, but became a problem maybe 15 years ago, is a little miniature wild cucumber. With these small fruit about the size of the end of your little finger, pendant fruit on this aggressive vine.
So that's that Mexican cucumber, right?
Yeah.
They look like little watermelons.
Look like little watermelons.
Yeah, that's what it is. We made the mistake of planting that as an ornamental once from seed, and that's the gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah.
Seems like maybe this year I don't see it, but last, oh my gosh, that thing is tough.
And that would come up in this dense perennial border, and you couldn't really find out where the crown was to pull it. It was just...
and it has weaponized.
It became weaponized in the garden. So between those three were the major weed issues, and who knows how they got here initially. It probably brought in on a plant that I got from somewhere or from someone, but I had to make some changes.
Right. Let's shoot something right here. We'll wrap this up down here where your annuals are.
Sure, be happy to.
All right. So although your perennial border over there, which when we filmed it last time, of course, was covered in lots of pollinators, but there's lots of pollinator plants that have gone back in there. It's not like you got rid of pollinator plants.
Yes.
You definitely have a pollinator garden. You did not slow down really on some of your annual spaces over here by the house.
Yeah, did not. These are these are all annuals. In these beds that surround the patio area here. We grow a diversity of annuals. Many of them are chosen for their pollinator attractiveness.
Right.
Zinnias are always a great plant for
Are these Benneries?
Yeah, these are Bennery Giants.
Okay, gotcha.
I love that cultivar or that series.
Yeah. They tend to be a little more powdery mildew resistant.
Yeah, they are a little more powdery mildew resistant. They will hang in there typically to about mid-August. A zinnia by mid-August is looking pretty tough here. But actually what I find is they will self-sow, and I'll actually get a second crop of self-sowers that will take me into October.
Oh, okay, nice.
Which is really, really cool. We have lots of salvia. This is one of my favorite pollinator plants.
Yeah.
This is African blue basil.
Yes.
Which many gardeners are familiar with. It's an annual, and before the first freeze, I always come out and take a few cuttings.
So you're keeping them that's what I was about to ask you.
I overwinter them in the house.
Yeah.
And by about early March, I will propagate about 50 to 75 of them in the house.
Yeah.
And put them out here in about late April, early May when I plant this border.
Yeah.
But this is just a wonderful bee and bumblebee plant. I will have to add that I don't see many bumblebees yet this year. It seems like the bumblebee populations are down. I've seen mainly carpenter bees working them. So I'm hoping that things improve a little bit.
Whereas, similar to our mountain mints, our native mountain mints, these aren't the showiest flowers, so people aren't necessarily going to grab them. If you see this plant, it probably needs, if you're trying to get a colorful border, other colorful things planted around it. Yeah. But it will be the thing that moves basically all summer from the pollinators.
Yeah. It will move, and that's why, in regards to its somewhat reduced floral display, I like to intersperse a few zinnias in it just to provide a little contrast and a little interest. Yeah. Let's walk over here, if you don't mind. We'll look another interesting plant. Stephanie, I'm going to focus in on these petunias here.
Okay.
Up there. I think maybe some of your viewers might be able to relate to this. I'm in the sun there. I like this old-fashioned petunia. This is often referred to as climbing petunia or old-fashioned vining petunia. It has, as you can see, a somewhat unkempt growth habit. This is an heirloom. This was described in seed catalogs in the late 1800s, early 1900s. And it's very popular in the South. Even where I grew up in Pennsylvania, A lot of the gardeners in that area would grow this in their gardens. And it just has that nice informal look. It weaves its way through these Verbena bonariensis.
Yep, and the pineapple lily.
And the pineapple lily. I just like that informal character in contrast to the very strict mounding habit of the modern hybrids.
Right, yeah, and all the selections of everything has been like, it's got to be a perfect round ball.
Right, and they're beautiful. The new petunias are wonderful. I mean, this just has a whole different use in the landscape.
Right, and I see the bees are figured out how to, they cheat and they drill a hole in the back of the flower. When the flowers they can't get into, they just figure out immediately how to.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Yeah, the bees. They call that side feeding. It's common on apples, and apple growers don't like it when that happens because the flower doesn't get pollinated when they side feed.
Oh, really? I did not know that was. I knew they were end-arounding the system, but I didn't know it would prevent seed set.
It typically results in less pollination.
A fruit set.
A fruit set,
Yeah, that's what I meant to say. Well, thank you so much, Denny. We wanted, after we talked to you at the plant symposium about your radical change over there and the reasons you told me why, I was like, well, that's a perfect video because we wanted to make that video for a while. That things do change and people, life changes, grandchildren, travel, aging, a long list of things that we could probably say that the garden probably does need to evolve at some point. I'm probably not going to have 400 species. You were in the garden last night. At some point, I'm not going to have 400 crowded species in a space at some point. It's a lot, because it is some maintenance to that.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me to share my thoughts with your viewers. I enjoyed it very much, and you're always welcome to come out anytime.
Thank you so much.
Yep.